Hey guys, CJ, how are you?
Aaron, how's it going?
Good. Steve.
He's gonna MC this. You
That's
better
right.
Do a good fucking job.
It's funny that you bring that up.
Don't be asking them bullshit questions.
It's funny you bring that up, Steve, because I was just telling them that as a guy walking in off the street, I think Steve Dash might be the coolest actor to play Jason. So
Who are you again?
just some guy.
Politician?
I walked in off the street. But
These are short-term memory.
that being said, I do believe that Jason Lives is the best Jason movie ever made. It's the best Friday the 13th sequel. It's my favorite. I believe it's the fan favorite.
Bullshit.
So I was tremendously honored to introduce both Steve and
Where the hell did
CJ,
you
but
get that from? The best movie ever made. It's a piece of shit.
Now, tell them the truth, Steve. How you really feel.
for the
What?
next
Tell them
60
what would have
minutes.
happened if you had done part 3, though.
He wouldn't have had a fucking job.
The next 60 minutes, Steve will be dazzling you with his wit and amazing, sparkling personality. Isn't that right, Steve?
I have a great personality.
I guess.
They got 2 little people
Right?
left.
Yeah, she said yes.
Steve, the way that you talk, I love it because I believe that before you got into this whole Jason thing that you're doing right now, you were a cop, were you not? And you look like a cop and you kind of talk like a cop.
He resents everybody.
I was a cop. I was a New York City policeman from 1966 to 1977.
Woo! Do you have any cool, New York City cop? That sounds like you got to have some exciting stories. We'll talk about Jason, but you got any cool cop stories?
Question. This is good for you. Expand your mind. Something about when you were a copper.
I stumped.
So 66 to 77, right?
Are you all done?
No, I want to know about it. Can you tell us something that happened to you on the job that you have memories of, be they fond or not?
Yes.
Could you elaborate, please?
I was in the 17th precinct in Manhattan, and in Manhattan, it's the goal of the police department, goal assignment. And I was assigned to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel one night as a foot patrolman, and they were having a benefit for the debts left by Robert Kennedy after he got assassinated. So they had a whole entourage of cops that were there, the security and people like that. And I was at one of the entrances into the hotel. They have many entrances. And I was with another cop, and we had to screen people that were going in to make sure, you couldn't let anybody in, So this guy gets out of a taxi cab. He's got a bowler hat on, one of the Irish. He's got a green vest with a green tie and a black shirt and checkered pants. He looked like a fucking clown. And he comes walking up, and I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to the benefit," he says, "that Robert Kennedy left." I said, "I don't think so." I said, "You got an invitation?" He said, "I don't need an invitation. I'm a relative in the family." I said, "Oh, yeah?" I said, "Well, you got to have paperwork to get in. I can't let..." "What do you mean you won't let me in? For Christ's sakes, I'm telling you, I'm a fucking member of the family. You got to let me in here. I'm a cousin to the Kennedys." And ranting on and on. A sergeant overhears this yelling, and he comes over and he says, "What's going on?" This guy's a fucking psycho. He says, "Take him to Bellevue." I said, "Okay." I radio for a radio car to come, and he's ranting and raving. A radio car comes, we throw him in a radio car. Take him down to Bellevue. We're going to cycle him. About a half hour later, after the guy's gone, one of the people that were in charge of the benefit comes walking out and says, "Now listen, fellas, if a little guy comes here with a funny looking outfit on and he's Irish, he's Robert Kennedy's cousin." And I looked at my partner and I said,
"Where's the sergeant?"
"No," I said, "Why did you do that to that guy?" And then I explained to the guy, he says it happens often. That's my funny cop story.
So
I like that.
So how did you? What's the journey from cop to putting a bag over your head and playing Jason Part 2?
I was in a police car accident transporting a car. A person was having a cardiac arrest on the street on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street. at the New York Public Library. I was assigned to a radio car at the time. And we got the call, we went there was a cardiac on the street, so we jumped out of the car. Sure enough, the guy's having a heart attack. And I said, what's the ETA on the ambulance? They said 20, 25 minutes. It was in the daytime, it was very busy. And I'm looking at this guy, and this guy's dying, you know. So I looked at my partner at the time. Today, in today's world, this would never happen. Back then, and I'm going back to 1965, 64, 1975, 74. I said, let's throw him in a radio car, we'll take him to the hospital. We won't wait for the ambulance. So we put him in the car, put him in the back seat. I got in the back seat, my partner starts driving, and we drive into Bellevue Hospital, lights and sirens blaring, you know. And unbeknownst to us, there's the kids, 3 kids in a car, they're in a car. They got their music blaring in their car, and they're shooting down 47th Street. We're going on First Avenue, they're coming across 47th Street. We had lights and sirens on. They blew the red light, and they missed the lights and sirens. They broadsided the car. We spun over 3 times. I was trapped in the radio car. We have what they call a prisoner control car. It had a cage in the back, and I was trapped in the back of the car. And a truck driver, the car started to go on fire. The truck driver he came out with a fire extinguisher to put the fire out, and he got me out of the car. The guy died, by the way. The guy died. But as a result of that accident, I developed a mild form of amnesia, and I was in the hospital for about a year, almost a year. So the police department psychoed me out. They said I was psychiatric.
And that's how he got Jason. See how it works?
And that's another story. But prior to that, I had been in the theater district, and I met a lot of people in advertising and stuff like that. And they said, if you ever don't want to do some acting or advertising, you know, come to us. But I was a cop. So when I got hurt in the police department, and I was out for over a year, then they decided to put me out of the police department. I said, I got to find something else to do. And I went back to this. That's where I got discovered, Nighthawks.
Did you get to meet Stallone or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. That's where I got discovered. That's how it led to the Friday the 13th thing. I was on the film. I did an extra job on the film, and they liked the dailies that were on the dailies. They saw me in the dailies, and they called me in, and they liked my photo. So they said, we want to use you in the film, you know, as a regular cop in the film. And I said, oh, everybody familiar with Nighthawks?
It's an action film with Stallone and Rutger Hauer.
Sylvester Stallone, Billy D. Williams, Rutger Hauer.
You're right. Tom Waits is in
there was an attack team. Anti-terrorist attack team, and they wanted to put me in the attack team. So when I went to the office to do the interview, the stunt coordinator there was by the name. God, this is a good story too. Cliff Cudney was the stunt coordinator. He was a tall, blonde-headed guy, you know, from California. You know, I'm from New York, so any tall, blonde-headed guys from California to me are gay. I mean, that was my perception, you know, they're fucking gay, you know. As soon as he said hello to me, I figured he's hitting on me. You know what you did when you first met me.
But I am, so what's the problem?
So I go in the office for the interview in the production office, and as I come out, there's this Cliff Cudney, the tall guy. He says, hey, partner, how you doing? I say, good. Now I'm excited because I just got finished talking to the production manager, and I got an acting job. I was so excited. I finally got a contract to be in a film. They gave me a contract for 3 weeks as a day player. I finally made it. I'm going to go from the bus to the trailer. I mean, it was like a big thing. It was huge to me. Young guy, had only been in the business a little over 2 years. I was very excited. And this faggot wants to talk to me. You know, I don't have time for this guy. You know what I'm saying? I want to go call my wife. I want to call my wife and say, I got a job as an actor. I got a contract. I'm going to be making... I think it was like $850 a week or something like that. It was a lot of money then. So he says, how you doing? I says, I'm good. I got to go. He says, no, wait a minute. I don't want to talk to you. I says, no, I got to go. He said, you were in New York City, but he was reading my resume. He says, you're a New York City policeman. I said, yeah. Did you ever think about being a stuntman? I said, man, I got to go. I got to go make a phone call. I got to go. What do you mean stuntman? I don't mean a stuntman. I'm an actor. showtime, So he says, oh, he says, we'd love to have you in good shape and this. And I said, okay, yeah, great. And I left and I went and I called my wife. I got excited, the whole thing. I show up 2 days later, go on set for my thing. And I walk up to I find the production guy and I said, I'm Steve Daskowitz, because my real name then was Daskowitz. And I knew I was in a trailer. Before when I was an extra, I was in a bus with the other extras. Now I got a trailer. I knew that. I was up there. So I said, I'm Steve Daskowitz. Where's my trailer? He says, 15. He says, trailer 15. It's up the street. And I said, okay, a lot of trailers. I walk up there and I see 15 and it says Stunt Man. And I'm looking at it. I see a bunch of names and my name is on this. So what the hell is this? And all of a sudden Cliff comes out of the door. He said, how you doing, partner? I said, okay. He says, you're going to be a stuntman. I said, why do I want to be a stuntman? He said, stuntmen make $13.50 a week. Actors make $8.75. What do you want? I said, I'll be a stuntman. And that's how I became a stuntman.
Well, you became a stuntman, but you were a stuntman on Friday the 13th Part 2, so.
Well, that came later.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. How did you end up as Jason? You were the first Jason. Well, I guess you weren't the first Jason. You were the first adult slasher Jason.
The real Jason.
It's the real Jason.
Well, I met this guy, Cliff Cudney, who got me as like a stunt guy, and I worked on the film with him and Billy D and all this and that. We all got along great, and I made a lot of friends in the movie business. It's connections are big in the movie business. I mean, when you go from film to film like I did, I was very fortunate. I met a lot of nice guys, and I always kept a low key, and I wasn't, I did my job. I learned how to do stunts and stuff. So about 2 years later, Screen Actors Guild went on strike, and nobody was working. And I had just moved my family from Long Island. I lived in Long Island into the city because I was working on so many films. It was easy for me to travel. So I moved the family in, and next thing you know, Screen Actors Guild went on strike. And nobody was working. It was about 4 months, no work. I was running out of money. I was practically broke. My phone rings, and it's Cliff Cudney, the stunt coordinator. He says, how you doing? I said, terrible, no work, nobody's doing. He said, well, I'm working on a film. I said, how are you working on a film? He says, they got this film, it's called Jason. We started shooting before the strike, so they let us keep shooting. That we agreed that we're going to pay whatever the difference is with Screen Actors Guild when they settle a contract. So he says, I got the show going. I says, that's great. He said, well, listen, the guy that they hired to play Jason, the guy can't do his own stunts. He said, he's a fucking baby. I said, great. He says, and I got to replace him, and you're the perfect size. I said, what's the name of the movie? He said, Jason. I said, Jason? He said, yeah. He says, you remember that movie, Friday the 13th? I said, yeah. He said, well, there was a kid in there, Jason, and now they're doing the movie about Jason. That was the working title of it. I said, really? He says, yeah. He says, can you get up to Connecticut so they can look you over to make sure you're the right size? Because they shot some stuff with this guy running in the woods. They already got the costume and the shoes and the whole thing, and they want to see if it fits. I think it'll fit perfectly. I said, okay. I said, I'll be there. I had no gas money. So I borrowed $50 from my brother-in-law. He gave me gas money, and I drove all the way up to Connecticut. I walk in, and I get there, and Cliff says, come on, we'll go to see the director. So we walk in, Steve Miner and Dennis Murphy. Steve Miner was the director, Dennis Murphy was the producer. They're sitting at a table like this, and I walk in over here, and they look up and they say, hey, how you doing? I said, good. So what do you think? So Steve says, yeah, he looks pretty good. He says, Cliff, I think so. He says, yeah. He says, yeah, okay. Take him over to the wardrobe, see if the outfit fits. He says, okay. So we go over the wardrobe. I put the coveralls on. I can't get the shoes on. I said, the shoes don't fit. He said, the shoes have to fit. But we already shot stuff with the shoes. If the shoes don't fit, they're not going to give you the job because you got to wear the shoes. I says, are you serious? He said, yes. So I squeezed my feet into the shoes. I got them to work. I had 4 kids. I had to feed my kids and shit. So we go back inside. There I am with the coveralls, the shoes, and everything. Look, and he said, "That's good." They said, "That's good." They said, "All right, get the bag."
Look at me. I wore a hockey mask. Wait, look at me.
I said,
We were styling in my era.
I said, "What bag, Cliff?" He said, "I forgot to tell you, you got a bag over your head." I said, "I got a bag over my head." I'm driving up to Connecticut. It took me 2 hours. I got to tell you, in the 2 hours that I drove up there, I was on Johnny Carson. I was on David Letterman. People were going to see me because I'm starring in a movie, Jason. And now I find out I got a bag over my head. I said, "I got a bag over my head." He says, "Yeah." I said, what's with the bag?" He says, "Well, and it's got one eye." No shit. I said, "What's the deal?" He said, "Well, what happens at the end of the movie? Then they take the bag off and there's this grotesque face, and that's it." So I says, "Oh." I said, "All right, I'll take the job. Let me see the script." He says, "You got no lines." The fuck? I got a lead role in the film. I got a bag over my head. I got one eye. And I got no fucking lines.
And the shoes don't fit.
I had to slice the back of the shoes open so they would fit for me when I did the stuff, and that's how I got the job as Jason in Friday. Oh, and the last thing is, they said that they spoke to the other guy that they fired. And did you know why he was fired? Does anybody know why he was fired? He was afraid to go through the sugar glass window at the end of the film, so they had to build a rake and rake him into it. That's why they fired him, because there was a lot of other stunts to do. So they said the only problem is that his agent won't release Paramount from the screen credit as Jason. So we'll put you down as Jason stunt double, but we'll put you in the front of the film. I said, I don't give a shit. That's fine. You know, had I known then what I know now,
I wouldn't have a job.
39 years later, he wouldn't have a job, and my name would have been on the front of the film.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up a huge fan of the series and everything like that, and for the longest time, I always believed that Friday the 13th Part 2 Jason was Warrington Gillette. That's who I thought Jason was. Why wouldn't they think that? Because that was on the credits. It wasn't until years later that I realized, no, he's in one scene, I believe, right? He jumps through
That's it.
the client that the end of the film when Jason smashes through the window and grabs Jenny.
If you watch the movie carefully, at the end when he comes through the window, the next scene that you'll see, it cuts almost, and then he comes out from behind the wall because they had to untie him from the rack that they rolled him in on, and he came out from behind the wall. But he was Jason with the makeup.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how angry you are about that, I'm sure. But we got to give CJ a chance. So
I'm having a good time.
I know.
I'm a fan. I'm good. Looking, everything's fine. Let's roll.
Well, okay, I know it's not quite as
Give
cool
the
as
question.
being a cop, but you did own a bar, right, in Georgia? That's kind of cool. So
In Georgia?
was it
So
in
we need to
Georgia?
start this conversation over.
Oh.
I didn't own shit. I was running a large nightclub in Los Angeles and just happened to do a scene one night when I had a hypnotist where the people that did the film Part 4 with Ted White, Real Effects, wanted to put a Jason character coming through for the hypnotist. And since my big ass was there and I fit into the wardrobe that Ted had worn, they said, let's use CJ. And then the rest is history after that, because they were just amazed by the contrast of walking through the screen that I broke and just standing there in front of these 300 people in a nightclub. And I didn't get the part originally. I was the second choice. They picked a stuntman. I don't know why. But they picked a stuntman, and unfortunately, he did do a scene that was one of the daily where there's a paintball scene. And man's had a great career as far as doing stunts and directing. But the daily came back, and the force wasn't there they were looking for. So they went back to where I had to go back to Paramount again for a fourth time, and left on a Saturday, and I was there, Covington. So the one scene was kept, but the paintball scene, if you look physically, a lot of people just assume I'm wearing padding, because the paintballs would hurt logically, but it's just a person with a little bit different physique than I.
It was Dan Bradley was his name, right?
Dan Bradley, yeah. Dan Bradley was a stunt coordinator. Help me on this one, because you know these people.
Dan Brothers, son for
He was a stunt coordinator. He's done directing.
Yeah.
He's done some producing too. He's had a real good career if you look him
been
up. I
around a
mean,
long time.
long
Did a lot
time.
of stuff.
well known in the industry and stuff.
Behind the scenes kind of guy.
Yeah.
But so coming from literally no experience in movies, like how challenging was that for you to actually do the stunts? And did you have any accidents on set where you hurt yourself or anything like that, despite the fact that
No, you know what? I was fortunate. My stories are weak compared to a lot of people's. I've never done a stunt in my life, so everything you see is me unequivocally. I have the utmost respect for stunt people, but I was fortunate. You know, I backed up into jail, lit myself on fire, 20 feet underwater, breathing off regulators, going through doors, shotgun jerk backs. I mean, it was just me being 28 years old and thinking I was pretty cool. And that I'd only been out of the military, 4 years, 5 years, and thought I was badass and I could do anything you put in front of me. So when you're of that state of mind, for you young guys in here and ladies, you feel that I can do that. And you do, or you don't. In my case, I was real fortunate because I didn't break or get hurt. But I had a great stunt coordinator, like Steve was alluding to, who walked me through all of my stunts and made me feel very comfortable for the success that we had.
He was
So
very lucky that the guy worked with him, the coordinator, because normally coordinators will not work with you if you're not a stunt guy. But they had a lot of confidence that he could do it. So, and he listened, just like John Fury did with some of the instances. I don't want to get away from CJ's story, but John Fury did a lot of the fight scenes, and he was very apt at it. He was great at it, and we let him use him, and that's the way they did it with him. They felt he was competent, so they went with him,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, never claim to fame has been a stunt person. Very fortunate that I did it. Very fortunate that I can take the credits for it. But the person who was a stunt coordinator, a person of Steve's skill set or Dan's skill set, those are the people you listen to. And if you do listen, I mean, and you are athletic at least, you have a very strong probability that you'll make it through at least one. That doesn't mean you would have done 2 or 3 other different films as a stunt and not been hurt. But I was fortunate to walk away and, a few bumps and bruises like anybody else. Just another day at the office at the nightclub when a fight happens. That's why I looked at it.
Friday the 13th movies. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Jason. I mean, that was the key. I mean, it was all stunt work. It was all physical, very physical, and you had to have a good stunt coordinator. In my particular case, Cliff Cudney was.
Steve, I believe though in your case you did have a couple of accidents, did you not, along the way? It was personal injuries.
I did, but the reason I had the accidents was because the director, Steve Miner, we had a scene in Jason's lair where Amy comes with the machete and tries to kill me. Cliff wanted to use a stunt double for her because we were shooting it from the back, and they wouldn't see her anyway. And we had such success with John Fury doing the fight scenes and stuff. Steve Miner and Cliff got into this little disagreement or agreement, call it whatever you want, that he wanted Amy Steele to do the machete. So we rehearsed it for about an hour. I hold up the pickaxe, she hits the pickaxe with the machete, and the machete falls to the ground. But what happens is, actors act, and stuntmen stunt. I happen to be fortunate enough to be able to act and do stunts at the same time, so I can draw the difference between the two when I have to in a film. But actors that don't do stunts have a tendency to always go back to the acting. So when she came down with the machete, she really tried to fucking kill me. And she went around the fucking pickaxe and came down and right on my finger. In fact, after she hit me, I grabbed my hand, and in my mind I said, I just lost my hand, I think. And I had all this fake blood all over me. And I was holding my hand, and they had turned up the lights, and we were looking all over for the floor for my fingers. And then when I let it go, finally, my finger was hanging off, and I had to go get 13 stitches in this thing. Yes, I did get hurt, but
Finger is working good now. Show them the finger.
Yeah.
Get a close up on the finger, please.
Would you like me to show you this?
Yeah, so does anyone in the audience have a question for either CJ or Steve? I'm sure some of you must.
Come on.
Right over here.
So playing a character like Jason Voorhees, you would be the first one. Like as an actor, where would you like got your inspiration for the character? You're a little different because you're 6 Jasons later.
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you the truth. Once I was an actor trying to be in a stunt. I had done a lot of plays and stuff like that. And once I put the bag over my head, for some reason or another, I felt like I had to lope, not run, not walk, but lope. And I knew that, at some point there was going to be a confrontation between Amy and I in this lair, because I read the script. And, how is he going to react, I thought, and I thought the tilting of the head and that kind of stuff. But I really, when I got in that thing, I felt a little evil. I did. I felt a little evil. And it was kind of easy for me to do it, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And he's still the same way, and he hasn't taken the mask off. He's got no hood, and he's still evil. Okay? Trust me.
This would be for you too, that question. 6.
I look at it, when I took part 6 on, I had the opportunity to look upon the past. And I just happened at this time to be, even today, in the middle of the series, if you look at it. And Steve and I work together quite a bit doing conventions. So, we hear each other's stories, and every time you learn something new, like about Steve or myself. But I always tell people, for those of you who've been around, I got to be fortunate to be part 6. I got to do the James Bond 07 opening with the slash. That's cool. Alice Cooper doing the music, cool. Frankenstein come back to life, something cool that we all can relate to. I got to wear a Batman utility belt. That's the way I look at it. So, I was in the middle of a series, and there was no nudity in part 6. There's a couple 4-letter words, and that's it. Otherwise, it really was straightforward. And if you really take a look at the evolution, I think it's fair to say probably part 6 is where you can really define that the character, quote unquote, which used to be principals in the movie, all the actors and actresses, where Jason became the principal of everybody. The movie is built around the Jason character. Part 4 of similarities, when we look at Ted White. Part 5, we kind of maybe lost our way. But when you see part 6, you come to see Friday the 13th. Are you really coming to see any specific counselor, or are you coming to see Jason? And I think that's where the series started taking on its own, direction. And even today, if you take a look at the actors, Derek Mears that did the last one, people wanted to see what Derek was going to do, how he was going to whack people. There's some great people, but you take a look at some of the actors way back when, Corey and et cetera, you didn't know who they were then and they are today. So you don't know who those character actors will be in the future. However, you do want to see Jason, because here we go again. It's been 35, 36 years, 39 years, and people still want to see Jason.
It's true. Let me tell you, that's a very true story. By the way, could you stand up in the back there with that machete? That's my favorite kill in the movie. Machete in the head, backwards down the chair,
Wheelchair.
with the wheelchair in the rain. That's my favorite kill. Great job, by the way. Really good. I got to tell you, when I did part 2, who knew? Who knew there was going to be this kind of a fandom and series? And after all these years, if I had known then what I know now, I would have did part 3 for free. I would have did part 4 and 5, and nobody.
And I wouldn't have a job.
And I'm serious. I'm very serious. They think I'm kidding around when I say it, but it's true. If I would have done the others, they wouldn't have had a job. But I didn't know what it was going to develop into. But I got to tell you why it developed into the way it developed. It had nothing to do with the Jasons. It has nothing to do with the storyline. It has to do with the fans. The fans is what kept this thing going and going and going all these years. You people, look at this room. I mean, come on. After 39 years and you still want to see us? It's crazy.
But I mean, you think about it, let me tap on that. Hey, young man, how old are you?
9.
What about you, young lady?
9.
All right, who's over
10.
other than Steve? Who's
Older than 62. Come on, lady. I know you're older. Bullshit me. Come on.
So look at the diverse fan base is what I'm saying. I mean, I don't care if, if holds, hey, you know Steve Dash, CJ Graham? But if you hold a bag up with a hole in it or a hockey mask, you know it's Jason, don't you? I don't care where you're at. Now, if I show a picture of Tom Cruise around the world, it's Tom Cruise. But I guarantee you put a hockey mask or a bag up. Are you familiar with this movie? Jason. Think about what I just said. I mean, that's an iconic image that's worldwide. So it's nice. I mean, and it is the fan base that's continued to do it.
Fortunately for us, fortunately for the fans, because it's supposed to be a fan movie, CJ and I start filming in November on Friday the 13th, Vengeance.
Awesome.
I'm playing Sheriff Jason Riolotti.
He's a
And
cop.
he's Jason's father, Elias.
Father knows best.
And it's a neat project, and it's going to continue to go. They asked me to do it. I said, sure, why not? Keeps going.
So you're making a movie about the father of Jason, is what you're saying?
Yes.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
So if for those of you who have ever met Tom McLaughlin, who was the director and writer in Part 6, he always had a secondary script, and if you hear him talk in panels, he'll talk about some of his ideas about Elias having a footnote, so to speak, in the Jason series to give people more. So, Elias is out there. And how does that character blend with Jason? Now, Vengeance does have a Jason, though. Just so you know, there is a gentleman my size, not his size, my size playing Jason.
Yeah, it's the guy playing Jason.
Right.
He's
But
a
then,
piece of shit, though.
Steve loves everybody, just so you know.
Not
I want to tell you, it's a group hug, all right?
His name is Jason, too.
Yeah, his name is Jason. So, I mean, there is a true hockey mask person in it, but Elias Voorhees, his father, is going to be the sick twist to see how his son became who he was, not just the fact that, Pamela, mom was in it. So now it's, father knows best.
Wow.
Please mention it. Look at it.
He is.
In part,
You can't find it.
wasn't it part 6, the caretaker, he was supposed to be Jason's father was the original idea or an idea at the time?
Conceptually, Tom wanted to make a little bit of a comedian form, and if you take a look like an Abbott Costello, makes Frankenstein, but he was told, as long as you don't make fun of Jason, you can do what you want. That's why there's a little bit of comedy in part 6. Never leave home without it. Credit cards going down
Some
the road.
folks got a strange idea of entertainment.
Exactly. So, I mean, 6 is a little bit of a different blend than most of the others. So, again, right down the middle in the middle.
So, sorry to kind of get you guys off track. I know you want to talk about this project, but you did mention a couple minutes ago, CJ, that is one of the coolest things about Part 6 is the soundtrack with Alice Cooper, the man behind the mask, and you played Jason in the video, did you not?
Right. So, for those of you, I got to pump this, okay? Love this con. It's a good con. We're going to have fun. But I am going to do a con here November 30th, December 1st and 2nd. It'll be the first time ever that I'm going to put the wardrobe on with Alice Cooper and do photos in Kentucky. So Louisville. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, he did all the music and stuff, and it'll be the first time the two of us will be together, full wardrobed out with fans. So it should be friggin' awesome, to be quite honest with you. And it's a great con because it does have, it's not just horror. There's the Fonz is going to be there, and Captain Kirk is going to be there. Huh?
You didn't tell me the name of the company.
SuperCon. Didn't they say SuperCon?
You said it was going to be a SuperCon.
Oh, it is called SuperCon. But I got to promote it because, I mean, for me, I'm excited to hang out with Alice. We see him. We have had photos and done things with him over the years, but to actually, have his manager give a shout out, say, do you want to do a wardrobe with Alice? I'm like, cool.
That's cool.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good,
Great.
straight down. I mean, this man is, I think he's 70?
He's my age.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper?
And yeah,
Yeah,
70.
70 or 71.
You know-
71.
73. I'm 74. You wouldn't know it though, right?
No, you look no
You
older
wouldn't know
than
it, right?
64.
You don't give me any fucking nod. You get nothing from me.
All right, who
Help me out.
Who here wants to hear another story by Steve? Because I can just listen to them all day long. Steve, you got to tell a story
She
about.
wants to ask a question.
No, she wants to hear another story from me. But this one's not age appropriate. Okay, tell us about the time on Friday 13th Part 2. I believe you guys went to the Kmart to get a microwave or something like that.
Oh, that's a really bullshit story. Yeah,
Sounds-
Cliff and I were out one day. What happened was they put us up in a camp in
You didn't get the trailer?
Connecticut. No, we were staying actually at a kids camp, and it was in the winter, and it was freaking freezing. So Cliff and I had put plastic over the wood to try to insulate the room we were in, and we said we got to go get a heater. So we went down to the local Kmart. There was a Kmart there. So we were screwing around with the sales girl and everything like that, just busting chops. And they knew we were from the movie set that we were shooting up the road. And he gets the heater, and I said, we could use a toaster oven. I said, because we can cook English muffins and shit in there and that. He says, yeah. So I got the toaster oven, and I said, I bet you I could walk out of here and not pay for it. They'd never catch me. Just walk out like I owned it. And we were screwing around. I put it on my shoulder, and I walked right out the door with it, and nobody said anything.
Ex-cop.
Stole a toaster oven.
So that's not the whole story, is it?
You wanna
That's
talk about
age
the sex
appropriate.
part? You want me to talk about the sex
No,
part?
I said it wasn't age appropriate.
The girl that
Most
I
of this
was,
conversation is age
the girl that I
appropriate.
was talking to inside, I think she knew that I stole it, but she wanted to come up to the movie set, and she did, and spent some time up there.
Oh, there you go. You guys spent some time.
Did some things.
I do have, I hope I don't mean to hijack this thing, but now that you're telling me there's a new movie coming. With Frank Miller doing his lawsuit and stuff, Jason Carey.
Oh, now this is a fan film. It's a little different, and all the proceeds that come from the film, everything, every penny that comes from the film, including CJ, you don't mind me saying, CJ's salary and my salary are going to China's
Children's Hospital.
Children's Hospital.
It is hard to say fast.
Yeah.
Very new. So if you go on Facebook, if anybody's on Facebook, there's a Kickstarter to donate to the film, and that money is going to go to Shriners Children's Burn Unit if you want to participate.
So was that your entire question since he cut you off?
I did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did.
just because I heard that's why it's kind of on hold.
Well, you said about Mr. Miller. So, for those of you who don't understand, Mr. Miller and Mr. Cunningham have a difference of opinion of ownership. Real simple. So there's a lawsuit of what Friday the 13th and Jason are kind of two separate entities, yet they're the same. And I'm not sure how it reads exactly, but there's something to do with 35 years of timing, things drop off. Till they come to a full resolution of who owns what, nobody wants to put up money, several million, obviously, to do another film. So you have the last one that was done with Derek Mears in 2009, and now that lawsuit has, I understood it's taken one person won something recently, but now it's been appealed. So there's still that decision before.
Victor Miller thinks he owns the rights to it, and Sean Cunningham thinks he owns the rights to it.
Right. And I believe, like you said, one, I believe, has Jason, who created Jason.
Victor owns Jason, or he's arguing he owns Jason.
There you go. One owns Jason and one has the Friday the 13th name. So the two combined make the series singular. If the movie just said Jason, most people would pick up on it. But the Friday the 13th kind of kicks it in. I mean, you may think of the Templars going back to the 1200s, but Friday the 13th, right? Well, that's when it started. But you think of Friday the 13th. So there is a conflict. And my understanding is until it comes to a resolution, it neutralizes everything. Me, and I'll say it on record, being a business guy, I think outside the box. Get the producer, put up $10 million, do the movie, get the first $10 million, pay them back, give them an extra $5 million, put all the money in the bank until you guys come to a resolution, and then separate what's in the bank. Keeps the fans
All they're
happy.
doing is
Right.
holding back the movie from the fans.
Right,
fans
keeps the
want
fans
to see it.
happy.
And the video.
And I think if you think about it, you find 100 million in the bank, like Halloween did a great job. Congratulations to everybody on that. You think of that 100 million sitting in the bank, maybe those two sides may decide, well, I'll take 70%, you take 30. Or I'll take, instead of the full 100%, because why would you leave 50, 60, 80 million in the bank because you want 100% of 120 million? Doesn't make sense. But that's a business person talking, you know. So, and I'm not engaged in it. I always tell people it's easy to be an armchair quarterback. I'm not in the game, so it's easy to stand back here and say that. So I don't know fundamentals, but we'll see what happens. It's time, you know. And I think one of the hurdles was, I understand, is about a year and a half ago, they were scheduled to turn on another one. Platinum Dunes was, if I recall. Derek Mears, I hear through connections, was levied to do Jason again, and it didn't materialize because a horror film came out prior to that.
Now LeBron James is supposed to be involved
And doing something
He
too.
actually started filming.
So
LeBron James started filming?
The one that he was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I know
So-
LeBron James was, there was a news piece put out recently that he was trying to get involved to have one done. I don't know.
But his company and another company are supposed to get together.
I think it's defaulted back to Paramount now too, if I'm not mistaken. Where before I think New Line was engaged with it. I think there was a default clause, but there's a lot of hearsay. He said, she said, they said. But again, armchair quarterback. You know, they come together. Most importantly, it's the fans, because as Steve said earlier in this conversation, the fans is what's kept it going all these years. So you know, we got to kind of put our differences apart and get it out there, keep the fan and keep the genre, because it is iconic worldwide. It's no longer just a state or a United States. The world
See, what
wants to
I've
see it.
never understood ever after all these years is that I've always said that they ought to do a Friday the 13th film with every single Jason in it as a character and every victim as a character. And just the mere fact that all these people that have been in these films and the fans are such big followers of them would recognize that the film would absolutely destroy financially. It would be incredible. Would be incredible.
I'd like to see Kane get whacked.
I'd like to see him get whacked too.
I think what he's saying is, I mean, I think it'd be fun to watch Ken, Derek, whoever, you know, all of us, like a bus driver, and watch the new Jason, whoever that may or may not be, whacked. Because the fans are going to say, shit, that was the guy in part 6. Oh, shit, that's Ari. Look at that band guy getting wiped. I mean, I think it has, you know, because people do know us by character, and a lot of people do know us by face and name. I mean, I've been through a TSA agent before and had them look at my ID and said, "Are you the guy that played Jason?" I'm like, "Really? You know that?" I go, "Yeah. You see that?" I go, "You see the bald-haired guy back there? That's Derek Mears. He did." This was like in 2010. I was shocked they even know this by name. So,
Well, you look like you could still probably play Jason C. No offense, Steve, but you look like you could
so
still.
I would have a job if Steve would have done part 3.
One of the big, controversies, not to beat a dead horse, but of course, was when Kane did not get the part for Freddy vs. Jason. Right? This has been has anyone here seen the Kane Hodder documentary?
Yeah.
It's really, really good. I recommend, if you haven't seen it, definitely see it. And it gets into that and how difficult of a thing that was. But I understand, actually, you got offered at one point. Did you not, CJ? Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, I've always been kind of quiet on the sidelines because I just am.
I hear you talking about it all the time.
No,
What are you talking about?
Somebody asked me about it.
all the time.
Somebody just asked me about that in the last few shows I've done. For those of you, Kane will tell you the same thing. I was actually scheduled to do part 7. However, Paramount said, let's go to CJ. John was going to be the director. Kane is a big horror fan going back years and years. I mean, that's just Kane. He really, blood, sweat, and tears. He had to go to John, the director, to tell, listen, he had to go to John, beg John,
I
so
did
to
an
speak.
interview recently, mentioned Kane 56 times.
Aye. But he's already mentioned in 6. So Kane went to John. John had to go to Paramount to say, I'd like to use my guy I'd worked with before, and they had to make that change. So Kane did get part 7. He went on to do 7, 8, 9, 10. The idea came up with the Freddy, and there was an interest of reverting back to old school, I'll say. And, for those of you who don't know, and Steve knows me well, for the last 20, 25 years, I've been executive management at casino resorts. So being general manager of casino resorts and chief operating officers, it did not make logical sense to leave a very well job running that casino right over there to go do an 8-week shoot for good money, but change at the end of the day because I have a long-term career and a job. So it just wasn't in the cards at the time. So deferring back to what you said, even today, now that I'm retired from running casinos, if I saw a script that was reasonable and I felt I could perform and deliver a product better than the Part 6 product, I'd entertain it. I'm not going to Mars, just so you know. And if it's going to make my Part 6 performance look less of, then I wouldn't be interested. But long story short, it's interesting when you see how it went full circle. But yeah, there were some opportunities.
And we only touched on it at the beginning, Steve, but we should probably touch on it because I'd mentioned that, for a long time I thought Warrington Gillette was Jason Part 2.
He said that name about 7 times.
56 times.
So what was that like for you in terms of, I don't know, how did you feel about it? And did you ever, talk to him about it, or was there any sort of...
Well, for those of you, raise your hand if you know the story. Raise your hand if you know the story. You don't know the story. So that's good. Most of you don't. I'll tell you the story.
I'll be right back.
As I said before, they hired him originally to play Jason. And the reason they hired him is because he played tennis in California with Sean Cunningham. Sean Cunningham. And they hired him, and they made all the prosthetics for his face in California for the Jason character. And at that time, he said he could do his own stunts, never realizing that it's a real thing to do stunts, So when they brought him to Connecticut, they applied all the makeup and stuff, and they wanted to shoot the last scene in the movie first, the real scene. All the running in the woods was nothing. You never saw the bag or anything. So they wanted to shoot that first. So that's why it took 7 hours to apply that makeup to him. So they wanted to shoot that first. So they did it. And then that's when they realized that they couldn't use him because of what happened and stuff, and he wouldn't go through the window, and it was a lot of problems, and they fired him. And then I got hired. I'm home years later, and I see that on Good Morning America, they're going to have all the Jasons. And I said, at the time I was married, I said to my wife, I didn't get a phone call for this. She said, no, nobody called. So we watched it, and it was 6 Jasons. It was Warrington, Harry, him, Brooker, and Dick Wheeler. And I'm sitting there, and this fucking guy is saying how he did all the kill scenes in the movie. I said, that guy didn't do shit. And then I got pissed off about it, and the anger stayed with me. And the reason it stayed with me is because I'm a stunt guy. I've been a stunt man for almost 40 years. Not a stunt coordinator. I'd never take that step up to be a stunt coordinator. I coordinated maybe drag things, a little thing, but I never considered myself a coordinator. It would be not right. Now, think of it this way. You go to a museum and you see a piece of art and you say, oh, that's a Monet. That's a Degas, whatever. That's that guy's work. If somebody else came up and said that was their work, Degas or Monet would be pissed off. So now I'm pissed off that this guy is on this show. 15, 20 years later, I get a phone call, and the guy says, hi, this is David Grohl. He says, I'm writing a book called The Making of Friday the 13th, and I hung up on him. 5 minutes later, the phone rings again, and it's Cliff Cudney, the stunt coordinator, my friend. He says, Steve, it's Cliff, yeah. You got to talk to this guy. I said, fuck this guy. I ain't talking to him. Fuck Friday the 13th.
Tell me how you really feel.
I was really pissed off about it. For years, I was pissed off about it. And he says, no, you don't understand. Warrington's been going to conventions and signing autographs. I said, what are you talking about? I didn't know anything about conventions. I didn't know about autographs. He says, he's making a fortune. He's selling T-shirts, saying he did all your stuff. This guy's going to expose him in the book. I said, you serious? He says, yeah. I said, he's making this money? He said, yeah. That guy's a dick, man. You got to go in the book so they can tell a great story. I said, okay. Guy calls me back, and I do a 2.5-hour interview with him, and the guy's amazed that I did all the stunts. We talked about each stunt and what I did. Now the book comes out. Phone rings. Guy calls me, Evan. He says, we're doing the 25th anniversary in California for the Friday the 13th. We'd like to fly out and do it. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what do I do? He says, just get on a plane. You get here. We'll give you pictures to put on your table. We'll show you what to do, because I didn't know what to do. I said, I get money for that. He said, yeah, you charge $10 for each autograph again. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, wow. I go out to California, sure enough. I get there, they got a table, they got a big thing on. I'm like, holy shit, this is like unbelievable. I mean, this is 25 years ago I did this film, you know. And Warrington is there, but he's at the other end of the room. I don't pay no attention to him, but I'm pissed off. Woman comes down, and she's got a picture of me, and she holds the picture in front of me, and she says, is this you? I said, yeah. She said, why is he saying that's him? I said, what? And it was a picture of me in the lair with the pickaxe. I said, he said that. She said, yeah. Okay. I get up, I walk down here, and I look on this table. It's got like 5 different pictures of me. And I start picking them up. I don't even talk to him. Picking up. He said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, who the fuck are you to put your picture? My picture's on your table. What are you out of your fucking mind? That's me. That's not you. Why are you telling these people this fucking ugly face? That's you. These pictures of me. Don't put these fucking pictures on your table. I took them all and I threw them in the garbage. There was a garbage pail. And he got up. I said, how dare you say that you were me? He said, well, you have done this because I was pissed off. And it was like 15 years ago, and I was a little tough, but now I'm crippled and shit. But he said, I had a skiing accident and I lost my memory. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Skiing accident? How'd you like to have a Red Cross accident? Don't ever put your pictures on my table again. Then he continued to go to all the cons and tell people at the cons that I was the phony and that he was doing the stuff. And this went on for like 10 years. It just stopped recently within the last 5 years.
So you really want to know how he feels?
Well, how do you?
To be fair, I will tell you that people come up occasionally and they'll have a picture of Kane or whoever, one of the other Jasons. And I always tell the guest, just for, hey, this one's not me. Yeah, I know, but the only picture I have. Okay. If you look at my autograph, it always says 99 Graham Jason 6. It'll always say CJ Graham Jason 6. But occasionally I'll get a hockey mask that may not be part 6. And I don't mind because everybody just associates the mask. I've never signed a bag. No, I have. People have brought bags from his table and said, well, I didn't wear a bag. Yeah, but will you sign it? Because people do collect. But most of us are very respectful of saying, well, that's Ken, I'll get Friday 13 pictures with Freddy Krueger. I say, this isn't me, right? Yeah, that's okay, though, but you're a Jason. Okay. So most of us are very respectful of each other's work.
Yeah, years ago, a fan came up to me and asked me to sign a hockey mask. I said, I didn't have the hockey mask. Well, but I need the signature. I need everybody on it. So I would ask the Jasons, the other guys, who are my friends, you guys have any problem? Because they want to collect signatures. No, we have no problem. Sign it. That's the only reason I sign. But I would never sign his fucking thing. With the face.
Yeah, I think let's go a little broader stroke on it. That's like me sitting there with the hockey mask and have pictures of Kane, Ken, Derek from their movies on my table and selling them. I don't think that's proper. But if you brought me one of theirs and I explained to you, then that's different. But if you can imagine me having all those different, it's like me being Michael Myers, and I've got all the different Michael Myers from the different series on my table, and I'm autographing them. That's not good form. Not good form.
A lot of people like to just collect signatures, and out of respect to them, I'll sign. but I won't sign his. And I won't sign a poster that had his name on it already.
Don't walk up with something with Warrington because you won't get it back. I'm just telling you right now, it might, for those of you that'll come up to me with something, you'll get multiple signatures, and I'll say, "Oh, I see you got Warrington. Are you going to get Steve's?" I go, "Be careful." Because you're going over there with the machete. Like, "Can you sign this, Mr. Dash?" Be careful.
All right, well, we gotta wrap up, but there's gotta be one more question from the audience. You in the back.
Okay, seeing as how you guys, the characters are accurate face covered the whole time, but did it ever translate to like a moment of getting a lot of groupies or anything like that?
Yes. 80s, 90s, 2000s, 50s, whatever. That's the best part of being Jason. You get a lot of groupies.
I'm taking the Fifth Amendment on that one because I know better than put stuff on camera that you'll regret. Because in 2 years, I'm going to run for mayor in Arizona, so I want my title to be
I
tight.
know you wanted to ask the question. Go ahead.
The red hair, right there.
You touched on it earlier a little bit, but I'm wondering if you could both tell us your favorite kills, or if there was another Jason that you're like, I wanted to be.
Okay, were you late to the meeting? Because he told you his favorite kill. Stand up.
But what was yours?
Oh, okay. You want to repeat yours?
No, that's
for everybody?
fine. Mine, that the wheelchair down the stairs backwards in the rain with a machete in the head. It was a great stunt. It was a great stunt. It took 3 days to set it up. Put weights in the wheelchairs, make sure you had the handrail lined so the wheelchair went down backwards. The guy that was in the wheelchair was a guy by the name of Tony Ferrantino. That was the stunt guy. His brother was James Ferrantino, the actor. And Tony was in the wheelchair that went down. But I worked on this stunt itself to set it up. So I love that stunt. That's a great stunt. A lot of work went into that stunt.
And mine is real simple. Mine is the breaking of the sheriff's back. And for those of you, you don't see. I'm not.
The lawn chair.
You don't see the gore. You know, blood and guts. All that's easy to throw out there. Pig guts. But to actually think of the power, and the force to snap somebody, that makes you feel good.
And the wheelchair down the stairs backwards was one shot only. We could only get it in one shot. They had 6 cameras and got it in one shot. It was a great stunt.
That's amazing. Well, guys, give it up for Steve Dash and CJ Grant.